In this video, we will show you how to change the struts on your Jeep Grand Cherokee. You can find them on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Before lifting your vehicle, it is necessary to measure the distance between the center of your wheel and the wheel arch. This will allow you to achieve an optimal tightening of the parts in their initial position. For safety reasons, we strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Jeep Grand Cherokee safely. And if your Grand Cherokee is equipped with Quadra Lift air suspension, you want to watch it. This will avoid damaging your suspension system. Activate the jack mode. To be able to replace the struts on your vehicle, you will need a scan tool so you can empty the gas from the struts into the designated reservoir. The procedure may vary depending on the scan tool model used, but the process remains very similar. In our case, the process is as follows. Select your vehicle. Press Common Special Function. Press Special Function. Select Spring Deflate to Atmosphere or Reservoir. Select the air spring you wish to work on, then operate a complete deflate. You can now safely start to remove your struts. If your vehicle is equipped with aluminum rims, you will need to remove the wheel first before you can remove the central rim cover. Put the wheel back in place. Put your vehicle back on the ground. Use a breaker bar and a 32mm socket to unblock the nut on the end of the CV axle. To be able to replace the front air shock on your vehicle, you need to release the wheel knuckle. To do this, you must remove the ABS sensor, remove the caliper assembly, remove the disc, disengage the upper control arm ball joint, disengage the outer tie rod, remove the sway bar end link, disengage the strut fork. Turn the brake disc inward to make this operation easier. You can now see the ABS sensor. Using a ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the ABS sensor retaining bolt. Then remove the sensor by jiggling it back and forth. You can use a screwdriver to help you. Now you need to remove the brake system. Tip: attach a piece of electrical cable or a hook to the subframe. Using a 21mm wrench, unscrew the two holding bolts on the caliper mount. Depending on the state of the bolts on the caliper mount, it may be necessary to use a hammer to loosen them. Finish unscrewing by hand. Remove the caliper assembly and hang it on the hook. Remove the O-ring. You can use a hook. Finally, remove the disc. Sometimes the disc may get stuck on the hub. If this happens, use a hammer to remove it. You must then disengage the upper control arm ball joint from the wheel knuckle. Brush the upper control arm ball joint retainer nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Release the ball joint with a 22mm wrench. You can use a ratchet and 6mm Allen socket to stop the ball joint from rotating. Then, using a ball joint puller, a specific tool for carrying out this job, release the ball joint. Remove the cotter pin from the castellated nut of the outer tie rod with pliers. Brush the outer tie rod holding nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Using a 21mm wrench, unscrew the outer tie rod holding nut. If you do not have a ball joint puller, a tool specifically designed for this task, take a hammer and hit the knuckle. The ball joint should come out of the knuckle. Unscrew the nut. Then remove the outer tie rod. Now you need to remove the sway bar end link. Using a 19mm wrench, a ratchet, and an 8mm socket, unscrew the lower ball joint nut. You can now remove the link. You can use a hammer to help you. Brush the nut of the bolt holding the strut fork to the lower control arm, then spray it with penetrating oil. Using a jack, lift the lower control arm to put pressure on the strut and make it easier to unscrew the strut fork base retaining bolt. Use a 24mm wrench to block the rotation of the nut. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 21mm socket, unscrew the holding bolt, then remove the bolt. Finish unscrewing the nut on the end of the CV axle. Remove the jack. Unscrew the nut holding the upper ball joint and remove it. Next, disengage the CV axle from the wheel knuckle. Tilt the wheel knuckle to remove the CV axle. Use a crowbar to disengage the CV axle from the differential. Then pull the CV axle out completely. The components to be removed are very often seized up, so don't hesitate to brush and to use penetrating oil to make removal easier. From the engine compartment, use a ratchet, an extender, and a 13mm socket to unscrew the first nut that hold the strut mount bearings in place. Then remove the metal bracket. Using a 12mm wrench, unscrew the air pressure line metal connector. Then move the line aside. Then unscrew the 3 upper strut mount retaining nuts using a ratchet, an extender, and a 13mm socket. The strut is now free. You can now extract the strut. You can order the struts used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Take your new strut. Unscrew the 3 nuts holding the strut mount bearing. Pass the strut through the upper control arm, then install the upper part first. Screw the 3 nuts that hold the mounts back on until there is contact. Using paper towels, clean the contact surface of the CV axle. Apply assembly grease to facilitate the installation. Take the CV axle, put it back in its place. Once you've checked that the CV axle is well inserted, you can install the CV axle in the wheel hub. Replace the hub nut. We recommend screwing the nut on the end of the CV axle a few threads back to avoid damaging the part. Using the jack, lift the wheel knuckle assembly so as to put the strut fork back in place. Next, reinsert the bolt. Use a crowbar to pry and align the control arm bushing with the bolt insertion hole. Then screw the nut back on by hand. Using a wire brush, scrub the knuckle of the wheel knuckle, then apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the upper control arm ball joint sleeve. Do not grease the inside of the cone. Then use a jack to lift the wheel knuckle in order to retighten the nut that holds the upper control arm ball joint in place. Use a plastic mallet to fit it into place. Loosely screw the nut of the upper control arm ball joint back on. To avoid damaging the bushings, tighten the control arm in the vehicle on the ground position. Lift the wheel knuckle with the jack until the original measurement between the center of the wheel and the wheel arch is reached. You can now complete the tightening of the upper control arm ball joint with a torque wrench. Screw the strut fork retaining nut back on the lower control arm until it makes contact. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Put the lower ball joint of the sway bar end link back in place. Use a plastic mallet to fit it into place. Screw the lower nut back in until it makes contact. Finish off tightening the nut with the torque wrench. Remove the jack. Put the outer tie rod back in place in the knuckle. Put the castellated nut supplied with the new part in place and tighten it using a 21mm wrench. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Take the cotter pin and fit it into the castle nut. You can now bend the cotter pin. You can use pliers. Screw the hub nut back on until it makes contact. Clean the wheel hub with brake cleaner and paper towels. Replace the ABS sensor, then retighten the retaining bolt. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Now put the brake system back in place. Put the new brake disc in place. Put the O-ring back in place. You can now reinstall the caliper assembly. Reassemble the caliper mount by screwing first by hand, then with a 21mm wrench to lock them in place. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Put the brake caliper back in place and screw in the slide pins, by hand at first. Then with a ratchet to lock them in place. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Then install the retaining clip. You can use a hammer to help you. Don't forget to remove the hook that you used to hold the caliper assembly together. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheels in place. Finish tightening the hub nut once the vehicle is on the ground using a torque wrench. Put the central rim cover back on. The final tightening of the 3 nuts holding the strut mount bearing is carried out once the vehicle is on the ground. Tighten the nuts with a torque wrench. Put the metal bracket back in place. Once in place, screw the retaining nut back on. Finish off tightening with a ratchet. You must now replace the air pressure line connector. Unscrew the pressure line connector. The new strut is equipped with a new connector. Install the metal connector provided in the kit. Take your time using the technique shown in the video. Next, screw the pressure line connector back on the air shock. Once the strut has been replaced, pick up the scan tool. Select your vehicle, press Common Special Function. Press Special Function, press Complete Fill. You can now turn off the jack mode. We recommend that you raise and lower the suspension. This will ensure that the strut is fully filled. If you have filled your struts with air, we recommend having a professional replace it with nitrogen after the procedure. This will prevent any potential problems caused by humidity in the air. Operation complete.
Quality parts, priced right, CarParts.com.